All right, so the video is running. So I will maximize this. It's a pretty waterfall. I wonder where that is. So I'm going to do, I gotta log in. So there's a couple of different ways. MySQL has several different front ends you can use, unlike SQL Server, which only has one, but we're going to use the Workbench. Let me zoom this so you can see what I'm doing better. All right. So I'm just going to search, and you can type it wherever you want, but I'm going to search for my SQL and Workbench. I'll go for the Workbench download. I should have both. I'm not sure which one I want to go to. Let's go to the Workbench one. I want to do, let's see what it says. Is it going to install the MySQL as well? Because we want MySQL. I'm going to go, just to be sure, I'm going to go up to the MySQL Server download. Oh, that's SQL Server. I don't want SQL Server. Let's go back. I want MySQL. Why is that? Okay, so we got MySQL Server, MySQL connectors. Let's try this one. I guess if it fails, we can download MySQL after the event. Let's do this one. Oh, so I'm just sort of, I went to MySQL, and I went to the installer one, MySQL installer 5.7. And I want to make sure that there's a Workbench. So I looked at this one. And I'm just trying to think. So I did the Workbench and sample models. I'm hoping that it installs everything, but I'm not seeing where it says that. But we'll go with that anyway. And so down here, I guess we just want to go to the download page, which is where we were. So why?
There's a download button on your right.
Oh yeah. So we want the MCI. I don't really want 32-bit. They don't. This is just MySQL. It's easiest just to search for it. MySQL. They call it MySQL.com, but it is owned by Oracle. I don't want the 32-bit if I can avoid it.
The last one is 64.
Down here?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh.
No, they both say 32.
Mine says.
I think the 30. It gives you both?
Yeah.
All right, so the first one? The second one? It doesn't matter a whole lot. Go back to where?
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, there was a 64-bit installer here. I prefer the 64 bits. They just perform better. Not that we're going to do anything that's going to stress it. Begin your download. No thanks, just start my download. So you do not have to log in. You don't have to register this. I'm going to run it, and we'll see what we get. I've done this. The last time I did it was a couple of quarters ago, and things change. There are links in the Canvas.
Oh my God.
You don't have to log in or sign. Go back one. And then go down. And then there's a 64-bit, the second one.
This one here.
Yeah. So I have the setup wizard.
So we just go no thanks and then start my.
Yeah, you just go no thanks and start. So I'm thinking this is only going to install the workbench, but that's okay. You don't have to sign in.
Where do you put it?
Let's do complete.
Oh, I see.
And I'm just going through and doing the install. And we'll figure out if we have MySQL after. So if we get just the workbench, it's kind of like having the management studio without the server. So I won't do anything, but we'll see. If we have to, we'll then go back and install the server. Yeah. Are you in the virtual machine? You are. Oh, yeah. No, you have to be inside the virtual machine. You shouldn't have to. You have it in the virtual Yeah.
Did you ever think about putting into just like traditional engineering? Doing all that radio, fiber optic stuff.
I did think about it. I was scared about it a lot because I was really bad. So I tried to open
I keep forgetting that.
Go ahead and
I guess I'm surprised that it's a tech guy.
Well, I was able to like figure it out once I got to college, but by then I was already like halfway through my program.
Yeah, that should be fine. So if you finish it, you should get the workbench. One of the things, do you guys do my mini installs? It seems like I spent half my life installing stuff. So when it should pop up with the workbench. Now, what I'm not sure of is if we have a server. So I'm going to do a plus here. I just want to see. I'm going to do localhost and see if we've got it. I think we probably do not. Yeah, so let's, we're going to have to go back up now and install the server. This is just the front end. You can close this or just minimize it. So that's the front end. Did you guys get it installed okay? We need to go back and get the actual MySQL. I swear last time. So this is the workbench. We want the MySQL itself. So we want the server.
MySQL server?
Yeah. And we want the Windows, and we want the 64-bit. I don't want it as a zip though. So we need to do go to the download page. And we want, oh, it's still got the 32-bit thing. I don't want the zip. MySQL Server.
MySQL Server download.
Go to download page, yeah. We want the MSI installer. I just didn't want 32-bit, but whatever. Let's just do one of them and see if it works. This is how I approach things. I just keep trying things and see if they work. Because I don't see a 64-bit offered.
Is it under community?
Where?
Yeah, it is. MySQL community and then Windows.
Where is it under community? Because we are under community. And then we want the community server.
And just go down and then it's file.
Well, so I don't want, so there's a 64-bit here, but I do not want those formats.
Oh, the zip.
If you look at it, it has a zip and it has an archive, which will be tar. Windows doesn't know what to do with those files.
But there is something on the top 62 and
So right here, it says this. That's where I went.
oh, okay.
And then we end up down here, and there are only 32 bits listed. So I would just say, let's do the first one, and then just start the download, and then run.
Sorry, can you show me quickly what's on?
So I just went, shoot. I just did one of the 32 bits. So
I think
you're in the, so go to download page. And then just,
the first one.
yeah, just do the first one.
What is an archive file? I'm just curious.
It means that it's been
Yeah.
it's been compressed, stored. So is a zip. It's the difference between whether it's tar or. Yes, I see that too. I don't know. I did, yes, you're sending some.
So we can just check.
So you need to be in the virtual machine. Yeah, you should, although. Yeah. So you can just minimize that. So,
No.
yeah, so just minimize that.
You just showed me.
So you don't have to log in.
You can just put in this file.
Yeah, that's okay. We're doing another one. So,
Just
that's the first one. Yes, no thanks for starting with that.
Yeah. So when I did that,
That's fine. And then just do that.
So
Are you gonna get it replaced? Actually, so let's go to MySQL. Go to MySQL.
Oh, you want that? Well, you're probably just gonna be in a totally different place then.
And then
Not
run.
skipping the class.
Yeah, let me work on this a second, yeah. Yeah. So go back. All right, let me figure out what to do with this and then. So the question is whether we want to add or remove this or modify it.
I think it doesn't like that it's a 32 with a 64. Can we modify it? All right, so let's go back. Let's just remove it. We just did it, but let's remove it. Don't you like the chaos here? I'm going to close it before I remove it. So we'll add it again too, but if we're going to have, so it's just the MySQL workbench, we'll just remove it. It's because they've only got a 32-bit here and it's a 64. 64 and 32 are often incompatible. And I thought, but that's why I wanted 64 all the way through. Let's see if it installs a new version. If not, we'll go get the 32-bit afterwards.
Did you click both the product and the MySQL?
I just clicked the MySQL.
So I got this box right here.
So you downloaded it.
Yeah, we just spent some time on this one.
So,
We're gonna get it all that way.
which one did you, what
I'm not now because I'm new.
Ever since you're coming to work,
All right, so it's removed this. Let's see what happens when we go next. All right, so we removed that. Is that all? This was never a problem before. Well, I uninstalled it. I am going to try again. MSQ Web Community MSI. So start my download. Run. Now that I've uninstalled that, will it work? Did it say? If it asks you to restart, you should probably. This looks better. It really didn't like that, the workbench there, I think. So I'm going to.
Did you just choose another installer?
I just ran the install. I just downloaded it again and said run.
Okay, the same one.
Yeah.
Instead of save.
All right. So this is actually what we should have done just from the beginning. Is just get this first one. You want me to go back and start over?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to cancel this.
Which one is it?
I'll show you in just a second. So what we want to do is we want to go to my MySQL. Now, if you download it with me, that you're going to need to uninstall it because it's 64-bit, because that's what I wanted, but it's not going to give it to us. So we need to do the 32-bit. You want to go to Community on the MySQL page. So this is devmysql.com/downloads. We want the community server. The community server is the free one. The others are free for a while. This is free. And then we want to just go down and go to the download page. When you get down here, now I'll come around and help you if you want. This isn't going as smoothly as I'd hoped. It's usually very smooth, but I screwed up a little bit. So I'm going to do download. I'm just doing the first one. I am going to run. So I'm just going to say no thanks to start my download, and I'm going to run. Oracle wants you to log in so that they or sign up so that they can send you ads.
So they still want to say that just run.
I'm just going to run it, yeah. So the first one, the reason why it's so much smaller is it is a web installer anyway. So it's going to download things. The second one is larger because it's going to download to your download folder and then install.
This is the right.
I believe so.
Okay.
So no thanks, just begin. And then you have to always say yes. If you don't allow it to make changes. Now I think we want the top one. It's going to interest in a new MySQL client application. I'm not sure what that is. MySQL router, MySQL. It is going to give us Workbench. It's giving us all these things if we do the top. I'm not sure what the new shell is. That's interesting. But we're getting the Workbench as part of this. So that's what I kind of remembered, that it was all together. But I'm not getting the same. Well, you have to do remove it. Remove this one. And click on that. The MySQL Workbench. Click on it. Get it. Go ahead and execute. And then you'll probably have to download it. So it still won't modify probably. And now and then just remove the Workbench. Because the Workbench is included with this, so we want the developer default. And that's what I remembered, that it was all there together. So I shouldn't have downloaded the Workbench separate. So I'm going to do next. And there's some extra things that it wants you to do, but we don't need them. So it's telling you that it can't automatically, within this virtual machine anyway, give you MySQL for Visual Studio. That's fine. We're not using Visual Studio. And it won't give you the connector for Python because Python's not installed. And that is perfectly fine because we're not going to do any Python in the virtual machine. So you can just say next. And we say yes, you want to continue. So these are the things that it's going to download. MySQL Server, Workbench, the shell, the router is going to give an ODBC connector, which we don't really need. It's going to give a C++ connector. It's going to give a .NET connector, a MySQL documentation, and samples and examples. We want all of those things. So I'm just going to execute this. And it's going to take a while. Not a long while. But,
5 minutes or something.
yeah. You have to restart. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And then we'll get you guys done. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It just means that they haven't done it yet. And if they fail,
They may fail. No, they don't. So let's,
Oh, you go ahead.
instead of doing that.
Yeah, it looks like the server, because we don't have one yet.
You don't want what we want to do. Yeah, they may make you remove it. So maybe it hasn't. Well, it's, but did you do the zip? You don't want I think this is back so.
No, I'm making huge, like, you're done. Like, stop it. Winston. Winston? Mhm. Oh, but this tuna,
It's not always.
So. Well, so then do yes, yes. Yeah, if you don't say yes, it just stops.
yeah.
So we do, just say. So this has to go. I made a mistake.
That's the one I have over there?
Yes. He's going to reinstall it. So that is, I will install it, and then when we do the other one, it will install. I'll be back. So when it's done. So just do the top one. So did you get it?
Yeah.
So do the top one. And go ahead and just do. Did you delete it? Those are all right, so these don't matter. These are all different extras, right? Partially, it's just that a lot of the prereqs for those are not installed on the underlying virtual machine. But we're going to get the server, we're going to get the workbench, we're going to get the documentation and the samples. That's really all we want. So I'm going to just do next. And they're going to do some configuration things. So you guys need me to hold a minute before we do the configuration? Yeah.
Right here, like this one.
Community, so you go down.
This was like,
Then you go down. It's a little platform. Where you just hack it.
That's,
Uninstall.
well, I haven't done
yeah.
Yeah. So you're in there. So, yeah. I haven't got there yet. You're not doing group replication. Whoa, I'm curious why some of these are installing everything and others are not.
Mine did not install everything. All right, I'm going to walk through the configurations and then I will come help again.
Okay, before you continue, mind gonna bring this like.
You have to bring it back. You have to go and run the installer again from the web page. Same one we did before. So we are doing a standalone. We're not doing a cluster. Okay. Cluster is where you have a whole bunch of servers that talk to each other.
Could you even have different databases like?
Yes, you could have different databases, and you can also share databases so that basically you have multiple copies so that if one server dies, you can, you know, what? Kind of like mirroring, usually not. Mirroring is the most expensive solution, more like log shipping. Do you know what that? You have one server that passes the log off to another server to keep an active copy going, and then if one server dies, you activate the other server. Mirroring has another third machine in there that's pinging both of them to make sure that the server is still good, and then it has the power to start the second one. But all we're doing is a standalone. We could do TCP, IP, development computer, all those are fine. Don't change anything. Strong password authentication, that's fine. Now,
put a password in here that you are going to remember. Because if you lose your password, you're going to have to reinstall everything again. Go in and say it. Next and then yes. All right, so the password that I use is password. Don't do this for a real server, but when you're doing this, it's got to be something that you can remember. I'll be there in a minute. Otherwise, it will. I mean, you'll be locked out of your own server, which I've done before, and really the only way out is to uninstall. I'll be there in a moment.
Read it out to you.
Can we click next if we have it?
Yeah, if you have it, you can do next. Okay. So password strength is medium. That's fine. All right. So Windows server name, I would just leave that alone. Start the MSQL server system startup. That's fine. Standard system account. Those are all good. They're not good if you're trying to build up a secure server, but they're fine for us. You would want to create a custom user if this was on a server probably, but we're just going to let it be. What this means is that when you log, it's basically just going to be your root. All right, so these are the things that it's going to do. It's going to write a configuration, update the firewall rules, adjust the Windows service, initialize the database, start the server, apply the security settings, and update the start menu. So I'm going to execute that, and then I'll come back. That's fine. Actually, it's not fine. Why is it
Yeah, so.
Oh, you know that's sorry, Chris, did you remove it before? No, actually. I don't remember.
So I put my SQL in that.
That's your password? It should be fine if you can.
Yes.
Which was my password for?
Oh, I put my own. Okay.
Well, I would just put, yeah, SSW
Oh,
server.
yeah.
It looks okay. Yeah. Go into your, if you do,
You said use custom.
yeah, but you can, are you with that? So So go to my.
Wait. That's actually.
Yeah, you should be able to do
Or install. Yeah, because there's a little different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know how to put that in the meeting.
Yeah. So do your password.
Sir.
I think we need to do, all right, let me go finish this. This is much worse than I had thought, but maybe. So I'm going to do next. So your password for root is whatever you did. I did password, P@SSW0RD1. And then we need to check that it's succeeded, and then we can do next. I click check. So I did password, P@SSW0RD1. I checked it. It said it was connected. Connection succeeded. I'm going to execute this last bit. And when it's done, you can finish. And then next again. And basically, everything's been finished. It's going to start Workbench, so I'm going to do finish, and it should start up Workbench.
We do roots, right?
Let's see. I shouldn't have to worry about the router. Okay, and password. Just do finish. Not sure why I started that. So, did you guys get to where it's done?
Okay, I gotta stop thinking about that.
There's so many damn steps. Can't you just click one button? No, you just do
You're kind of just like, I finally got it. I was trying to like make it do the Windows thing. Because you're basically like.
Just ignore that. Just finish. And then
This is that shit.
password down here, whatever you do.
You already know something.
Well, what I mean is that like I need basically the exact copy of what she did in the here. Yeah. I just started it, so that's
For mine, I changed it. I made a little animation. So if you go over this, I don't know how to get this was saying that, but it was like, it was back to the original.
So,
What's that? Color schemes. So some colors go together.
Yeah.
Exactly, and so you can, it's called colors.coolers.co. It's supposed to generate new colors, and the colors you want to lock in. And then it'll colors that go well with them. And you can lock in your colors. I'm so creative. And it also gives you like a nice red at the bottom. So you can also do these, so you can do these types of sports. So I'm not good with the color thing. That's why I should see my dress. If you don't know, done it with really bad. It's bad. Kind of like graphite last. Neither one.
so how are things going in general? Most people got it?
No, we had some problems.
You have like the design skills and getting all that stuff. That's really tough competition.
So what are and what are the things that don't go beyond this? Unless these servers. So I removed do it again. All right, so you got the command line and the workbench, you're good. What is it, host name? Was this what was there before? Because you shouldn't have to. No. Yeah, we didn't click anything there. So just go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. No, just, and then next. We don't need the router. So host name is localhost. And then, okay, so do okay. All right. How many else you guys are going now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are okay. If you got the little command line window, we gave you both interfaces, workbench and command line. You can close the command line unless you want to play with it.
What you can expect.
All right, so go back in. You're in here. So just start. It goes, when it goes smoothly, it goes, yeah, just give it So I'm going to show you a little tiny bit about how to use this, and then and what the next assignment is. But I do want to do some kind of work on Now, don't move on until my circle is done. Typically, some of the others will get installed too. All right, when you're in Workbench, so I'm going to lower this. There's Workbench. So you should be able to link to it's kind of like the Management Studio. This is just a client. The actual server is the local instance of MySQL. If you click on that little button, it should give you a dialog to log in. And you want the password again, p@ssw0rd1 for me. If you do save the password in a vault, it'll log in automatically without you having to type the password. That being said, it can still screw you up because it's easier to forget if you never use it. All right, so this is similar in some ways to SQL Server. We have Sakila is a sample database, and so is World a sample database. You can look at those if you want. We'll look at them later. What I want to show you real quickly, and then I'll come around and finish up with everybody else, is if you do File, New Model, it will give you a thing here, and where it says MyDB, we can change that. If I click on that, and we'll do this again, but I just want to, I'm going to double click my model, and I can change the name of this database down here. From MyDB, I had to double click it to do that. MyDB to, what do we want to name this? The one we're going to be working on is called Python Club. And basically, it's a database to be the back end to a website that is for a college club, right? So I can do that. I can, once I've done that, notice it says Python Club right here. You can add tables here, but what you really want to do is add a diagram.
There's no add or okay. Like, how do you add it?
So you need to do File, New Product, right? So you named it.
Yeah.
So there's that diagram over here. The other stuff is there. So this diagram is kind of like the designer in SQL Server, except it has one big advantage. It does not write it to the database right away. So you're free to play and design it here. So I'm going to just do, notice how there's a little icon for a new table. And you can also get it by just doing T. But I'll drag it on. Try to drag it on.
How do you get there? Where you ran?
I did, you hit double click the diagram. Okay, so there's a table. I was trying to drag. You have to just click it and then click inside the thing. So I double click the diagram icon at the top there. So there's a table here. If I do this, I can, in this table, if I go down here, there's properties. Oh, come on. Do I have to right click to get the properties? Double click it.
but I did. There they are, the properties. So I could name this table, like I'm going to just name it members. Then you can do column names, and you can add column names. It gives you automatically an ID members, which if you want, you can do. So you click on table. Right, so then you fill. We don't make any big utility. All right, so I'm going to leave it at this. Notice the PK, that means it's a primary key. And NN means not null. All right, and then there's other things, unique, binary. I'm actually not sure what is. I need to look at these. I used to know what they are. I think if I look at them over here, oh, down here it says binary, unsigned, if it's an int, unique, zero fill. That means if it's a null, instead of doing null, do zero if it's a number. AI, auto increment. So we might want that. And we don't want G, which is, well, actually, auto increment. It generated only works when you're doing universal IDs. It's not for numbers. So anyway, those are, you can check those. And I'm just going to do like a member name. So it has member columns there. I just want to show you the gist. Notice it has varchar. And if you want it to be bigger, you can do that up to 255. Needs the parentheses though. And I'm going to make it not null, which means that it's required. And then I'll just do member email. And I will make it varchar and probably bigger than 45, like 150 or so. And I'm going to make it, oops, this one I want to go away. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to put this one as not null also. And you can see up here, it's making the table. This is, don't do this. I mean, you can do this to show it, but I'm just going to make a table that has ID members as a foreign key. So I'm going to double click this one. It'll come down here. I'm just going to say, what do I want to do for members? What? I'm just going to call it test foreign key because this is not a table you would want in your database. I will give it its own foreign key. I mean, its own primary key. Part of it is I want to show you, if you scroll down here, what I need is I need to remove this. I'm going to close that for a minute. You can always get that back by double clicking again. Notice how it's got some relationship things here.
And one of the things I want to say is you really, really want to use the dashed ones.
All right, so I'm going to click on the dashed thing here. You start on the foreign key side, and then you drag. Is it going to go? I just made a foreign key with itself. All right, so I'm going to get that again. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click here.
And it makes a foreign key that relates to this table, one to many. But it's weird because you start on the foreign key side instead of the one side. It's the opposite of what SQL Server does. And it does mark foreign keys by putting a little diamond there.
The thing is, you can build these databases here, and it doesn't become real until you go to database and you say forward engineer. Forward engineer takes your diagram and turns it into a MySQL database. It's a nice thing. That's why I would build it in here, is that you don't have to repeat building it, because you can just say database forward engineer and it will actually create the database for you. We'll spend more time on this later, because I want to get everybody set up, and a lot of you are still working on the other one. I want to give you at least a little time to do that. So just real quickly, I'm going to go to Canvas. And then I'll come around and help people that are still having issues. Are you still having issues? Okay. So I'm going to do, I'm just going to log in. All right. So in the 220. At this point, you could start, but you might just start kind of playing. And you can do this as a group also. There are groups. So I'm going to go to modules. And this one is for MySQL. So it's the Python club. And the very first thing is kind of like before, where we do a draft. And then I want to review the drafts before you actually create the database. The idea here, again, is it's a school club that meets weekly to discuss Python. They host meetups and speakers. They want to build a site for their club that lists all their activities and provides a central place for members to post links to resources, you know, like where you can learn stuff about Python and people. And so it's going to serve as a content management system for the club website. Should track meeting times and places, summaries of meetings, speakers and presentations, and as well as all upcoming meetups and events. It should also track all the resources and tutorials posted by members. So it says only members should post announcements. You do not have to worry about the security of this. But it does mean that you need a members table, right? You do not have to worry about trying to control. It does say only club officers can post meeting times, so you probably need some way of identifying which members are officers. But you don't. The security is not something you do in the database tables. It's something you do in the roles and permissions. It's not in the tables itself. Does that make sense? So, because when it says this, a lot of people get involved in trying to do the security inside the database tables, and that you don't. You don't have to say what their permissions are inside the tables. Don't worry about these as before. These are survivals from another iteration of this class. So I really want you to design a database that would do this. MySQL is the back end for 2/3 of the web, I think.
because it's easy to use, not because it's the most secure or powerful database, but because it was cheap, free, and easy to use. So it's out there a lot, and this is the kind of thing that it's used for a lot. It's a database backend. WordPress runs on MySQL, right, and PHP, so it's really common. I just wanted to get you enough to get started, but if you're still working on Vince's, please feel free to do that. And you can start on this like next week. I will find out in a minute, hopefully, whether these labs are open on Wednesday. So I'm going to real quickly kill my video, and then I'm going to come around and help whoever has an installation issue still. So